This is Express Leads. Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, and it's time to drop another episode of Express Leads. My name's Paul Brady. I'm your host, and today we're going to be discussing how to grow and maintain your audience through education and engagement. So that's something I talk about a lot, and if you listen to my show a lot, you'll hear that theme throughout. I'm in a networking group, and I talk about that theme in the networking group as well. It's key to really reaching people. So let's dive in. I have 12 tips here for you. The first tip is before you do anything else, you really want to define your audience, right? That's how you have to start. So in other words, if you're out posting on social media and it's a mixture of politics and business and your hobbies and all this other stuff, you're carving yourself into too many pieces there. Now, I'm not saying that you can't mix it up and post different things on social media. I do. I post about coffee. I do post about my dog sometimes. But mostly, I have defined my audience and I focus on what my audience is interested in. So if people follow me, they're interested in marketing, and I list that I work with SEO and also content marketing and inbound. So people follow me as a digital marketing agency, I'm assuming because they're interested in growing their businesses, or they're peers, or they like coffee, which, I'm okay with that. I don't mind if people, follow me because I like coffee. That's fine. I like coffee and I can interact with them. But the point is, I'm not trying to concentrate on too many major interests. You have some minor interests, but the major piece of what you're trying to promote should be the focus of your audience is, and that niche that you have to pick out. So, so important to start by defining your audience. That will govern really the way you move forward on everything: your live streams, your video, your content marketing, your social media channels, all that stuff. So, and while we're on the subject of that, the second tip is, it's a good idea to use a social media management tool like Hootsuite or Buffer to schedule posts in advance. So what do I mean by that? So I don't mean that you should post things all the time where, you're talking about in advance, going to the store or, certain things that just don't seem natural. The best thing about Hootsuite or Buffer is if you have a social media calendar and you have events coming up, it's a great idea, especially if you're hired a social media manager, to have them out there scheduling things in advance of upcoming events that you have. So if you're going to a trade show and you're going to be presenting there, or if you're going to be speaking in a public event, or if you're attending something that is pretty important, like an important conference, like Inbound in Boston, or any number of other events, you want to kind of try and let people know what's going on. Again, you want to keep them interested in what you're doing through engagement and education as well. Since you're going to be talking about stuff, you can kind of give them a sneak peek at what you're going to be doing, and a lot of stuff like that. So Buffer and Hootsuite are great for things like that. Like I said, people can sniff it out if you do it in a way that makes you seem like a bot. So, you want to be careful not to post, like some people automatically post the same thing over and over again. That's obviously a bad thing to do. You don't want to do that. Use it the way it's designed to be used, right? So, events, stuff like that. If you have coffee every day, that's fine. Post a picture of coffee, talk about it. Make sure it's different every day, a different time, that kind of stuff. And it leads into, tip 3 actually leads into something I want to make sure people do, even if they use Hootsuite or Buffer. And the third tip is on how to grow or maintain your audience is, you want to engage with them by liking, commenting, and sharing their posts. So if you're using Hootsuite or Buffer, you want to make sure that you don't ignore the rest of your social media, right? You're not done just because you're automatically posting things. To engage with people, you have to pay attention to the ones that are liking the things you're liking, commenting on the things you're commenting on, And you want to engage specifically with them by liking, commenting, and sharing their posts as well. As long as they are, again, going back to tip one, part of that niche that you've defined, right? You don't necessarily want to share, like I never share political things on my business stuff. It's just, I see people do it a lot, and it's just not a good idea. I think if you really want to concentrate on that, you should have a separate account for that. But I like to stick to business when I'm doing that stuff, or fun, or other things. And certainly, it doesn't mean that you can't post the occasional thing, because there are things that happen in this world that everyone wants to talk about. So I wouldn't ignore things, but I wouldn't post every day about the day-to-day horse race of the political environment and all that kind of stuff. I'd avoid that. But stick with, like I said, how you've defined your audience, right? And so the other thing too is, since we're on this subject, and the fourth tip is, you want to respond quickly when someone asks questions or comments. So, you're engaging with them, but they also engage with you. And by not, it sounds funny to say this, but it makes total sense, right? If someone is engaging with you by asking you questions or leaving you comments, you really, really want to respond to that so that they feel like they're heard and, valued, right? If people leave you comments and you never answer, and I've seen this before, you go on social media and you flip around on someone's channel, you're scrolling, and you notice that they get asked lots of questions and they never, ever comment, like, or respond. That's a red flag, so people will look at that and say, well, this guy's checked out. And Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they're all about, engaging with your audience. That's what they're made for. So it's almost like going to, a party with friends and staying in the corner with a drink. And as people come up and talk to you, you just look at them. They're not going to stand there very long. They're going to walk away. So it's the same on social media. They're not going to stay in your channels very long. They're going to say, this guy's checked out, or this gal's checked out, I'm out of here, right? So don't do that. The fifth tip is that you want to provide educational content, and you want to do that in the form of things like videos, podcasts, articles, and other types of resources and on multiple channels, right? So you don't want to just post links to things all the time. That's the other thing people do. A lot of times they'll post links to things. You want to put in like I said, that's where it's appropriate to kind of put things in that are a little off your target audience, because you're a human being. So you're going to talk about, your breakfast, or, one of your kids was sick or not feeling good that day, or how much fun you had with the family at the ice cream shop over the weekend, or out having beers with your friends or whatever. Keep it real. Out having dinner, date night with your wife or your girlfriend or something, or your boyfriend. So you want to post things like that once in a while, but you want to provide educational content, and you want to do things with videos, podcasts, and, like I said, articles. So those are highly engaging. And the reason is that people like to watch videos, and they like to listen to podcasts, and other forms are great. You definitely, and moving right into tip 6, actually, right? Sharing valuable information from credible sources that are relevant to the topic at hand. So these all go hand in hand. You want to provide educational content. You want to do it in various forms, but also there is a gigantic resource out there called the internet, right? And you can share valuable information from other people. It's credible sources, right? You don't want to just share it from anyone. You want to make sure you read the article before you share it, or look at the content carefully before you share it. But if you're doing that, and you're sharing valuable information from other credible sources, as well as posting your own information, as well as posting, maybe links to your videos or links to your podcast, whichever, one that you concentrate the most on. Those are all things that make a great social media experience for other people, in the regard of, engagement and education, right? That's how you grow your audience. That's how you maintain your audience. If you start out, doing awesome, and you build up some followers, and then all of a sudden you just drop off the face of the earth, eventually, you're your audience, that idea of growing and maintaining your audience is going to start to not only stop growing, it might shrink, right? Because you're not maintaining them anymore because they're not interested. So all really important things. On tip 7, keep track of your progress through metrics like social media followers and email subscribers. So one of my favorite terms of all time, and I say it all the time, is analytics. Data and analytics. They're super important to anything you do. So if you're trying to measure your effectiveness, how are you going to do that unless you're tracking this stuff, right? So when you talk about growing and maintaining an audience, if you're not looking at your follows, you have no idea, unless you're starting at zero, which is possible. But if you have no idea where you started from and where you are when you're checking it, then how do you know how much you've grown? How do you know what you're doing? Are you looking at the analytics on Twitter, the analytics on Facebook, looking at Google Analytics for your website, Google Console, video views, length of views on YouTube, podcast listens, estimated audience size, estimated listens, percentage of listens, where they're listening from. If you do multiple channels like I do, or hosting platforms like I do for my podcast, I check out, Apple Podcasts, I check out Google Podcasts, I check out Spotify, all those platforms that I post on. And you get to see after a while, which ones seem to get the most traffic to you and all that. So you have to pay attention to that stuff. The 8th tip is engaging with your followers by asking for feedback, answering questions, and posting pictures or videos. So again, videos, like I mentioned earlier, are important. But one of the things that's really effective that people don't work on or do is you got to engage with your followers, and ask them questions once in a while. And that can be done in the form of a simple question. It can be a poll. It can be, like for instance, someone that is, that works in the clothing industry or maybe as a model might post 4 pictures of 4 different types of outfits. And they might say, okay, A, B, C, D, which one do you like? And it's a poll. That's an engaging question. That's really worth that. Okay. And, the funny thing about that is that anyone can do that in any industry. If you are, a digital marketing agency, you might go off and ask people, you're trying to identify their pain points. So you might be asking questions or sending out polls that deal with, what you might regard as the typical pain points for your clients. And you'll get people to answer, engage, and talk with you. And, that could turn into business. Again, you don't want it to be this clumsy thing where they answer it and then you send them a link to, your website or product or service. You want to really kind of help them and almost give them the opportunity to ask you for more. I've done that several times myself, and a couple examples just by going out into different Facebook groups. I've looked for people that, were asking questions, and I answered the questions, and I answered the entire question. I basically went out and did it. And, I get people saying, well, why would you do that? You're telling them what they need to do. You're not, you're giving it all away. And I'm like, well, because number one, I really do want to try and help. And number two, a really high percentage of people will appreciate the transparency, but they don't, at the same time, that same high percentage of people don't really want to do it themselves. But when they see that you have expertise and that you've shared it and that you've done all that stuff, then yeah, it works great. That makes perfect sense. Engaging with your followers, questions, feedbacks, all great stuff. The 9th tip is, to create an email marketing campaign. And I had a whole podcast on email marketing recently. But you want to create one that's tailored specifically towards, your customers' preferences and interests. So if someone comes in and you give them, you have a really engaging pay-per-click ad, they opt into your list because they want to get what looks like a really good lead magnet, which might be an ebook or something. You don't want to then send them out emails that have nothing to do with what they just downloaded and what they're looking at. It has to be tailored specifically to their preference and interest, and also the campaign you're working on, right? So if you're doing something that's talking about, walking to lose weight type of thing, health and wellness is a very big niche. Um, you want to be able to focus on that. You don't want to send them, get them all interested in an ebook, they download it, and then you want to start emailing them about, gym memberships or something maybe not as focused, or let's say something completely different, a whole different product. That would be bad, obviously. I think that's common sense, but sometimes people get so lost in the process of doing these things that they don't take the time to stop for a second and kind of look at it from a higher level and say, okay, is this, I'm going from A to B to C to D here. Do these things all flow? Does it make sense? Am I, jumping off the subject here? Am I covering the interests and preferences of my clients? So you got to look at all that stuff, right? The 10th tip is, and this one's important and it applies to every tip on here, is to be consistent, right? So if you're going to publish at least once per week, you want to make sure that it's done consistently and it's done every week. Like I try to publish my podcast every Friday around the same time. So people start to know my schedule. And if they follow me and they like it, they'll say, oh, I'm going to get another podcast Friday at 9 or 10 o'clock. Great. Generally speaking, I do 9. But even so, just getting one out, if you're that busy and you can't really do it, at least getting it out on the same day, like Friday morning, Friday afternoon, whatever. Just getting something out there once a week for a podcast is important, because if you're not being consistent, then people will stop following you. Same thing with your social media posts, right? You don't want to post 1 million posts to Twitter every day, right? That's something that would be bad. But you want to post something that is relevant to their interests. So if you're trying to promote a business, you probably want to do something where maybe you're posting something along the lines of 7 or 8 posts that are just providing, just straight up providing value. They're not really benefiting your business at all. And then you might want to post 1 or 2, possibly 3 different things that might have to do with, services and products that you offer, right? If you only have one service or product, you may not want to post 3 things in one day. But it's up to you. You got to kind of gauge that. Mostly provide value. And then people may look at your offers and say, oh, this guy sends me great stuff all the time. And that happens to me all the time. Literally, there are people on YouTube that post the most unbelievable content all the time. And from a digital marketing standpoint, I really appreciate what they're doing. So I'll go off and look at their offers once in a while. And it's interesting. And that's exactly what you want. You want that kind of engagement with your audience. You want to give them value, and then of course you're running a business. You want to put a few things in there for your own business. Look, the 11th tip is, it's important to use hashtags to increase the likelihood of being found on social media platforms. Places like Instagram or Twitter and things like that. Hashtags are really important because hashtags are almost like the equivalent of what you might call a keyword for search engine optimization, right? How do people find your website? How do they find your local business? How do they do those things? Well, if they're searching on certain keywords like dog walker Worcester, you might show up in Google, from a Google My Business listing because you're dominating for that long tail keyword, right? Hashtags are the same thing in a way, because the only way people can find things is on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, things like that, or to have hashtags. So I use a tool called RightTag, and it's spelled RITETAG. Again, I always post a link to all the tools I discuss in the description of the podcast, so look for it there. But RightTag is a great tool for finding really active and hot keywords. So they have hot keywords and keywords that are likely to grow over time. They give you those. So if you just post for hot keywords, and it allows you to search and do. I mean, I can't go through the whole thing. I might do a separate podcast just on RightTag, but it's really great because I can even create sets of hashtags, right? So I can go in and say, okay, let me see. I'll go to my coffee hashtag set, or I'll go to my email marketing hashtag set, and I can click copy from right tag, go back to Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and paste that. And now I've got some really highly active keywords that people are likely to see. One thing I will tell you is that is 100% true. If you don't post any hashtags at all, people are never going to find you. They're never going to find your stuff. I mean, you could do ads, and of course they'll find you through that. But if you want to do things organically, you really need hashtags. So that's a really important one. Okay, now the last tip. I jumped the gun. I jumped the gun a little bit in the last one, but the last tip is you really want to create consistent live streams. And I know I talk about consistent content, but this I want to focus on live streams separately, even though obviously they're content. But consistent live streams on platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter are really, really important. And video is super engaging. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, you can do an Instagram live, you can do a YouTube live, you can do a Twitter live. All three of them offer ways for you to go live. And people like video. And one thing they like even more is live video. So I know on Twitter you can invite people on there, so you can actually have conversations with people. From an audio perspective, actually, too, Twitter just kind of took Periscope, which was a very popular audio app that was out there before, that you could platform where you could share conversations and see video and all sorts of stuff. They added Periscope, those types of Periscope conversations where you can get a bunch of people in the same room and you can pick on people to talk, and they call it Spaces on Twitter now. I use Clubhouse, not to diss Twitter, but one of the things I don't like about Spaces on Twitter is you can't find them. On Clubhouse, I can schedule when they're coming up. I can see them. I can join them if I want. I can create my own easily. Twitter has limits. You have to have a certain number of followers. You have to, the same game. So that's a little disappointing. And I don't mean to get too far off the subject, just to jump back to live streams here. If you want to promote your business and you want people to see what you're doing, having a consistent live stream is really, really great. And there are all sorts of plugins, and I didn't put Facebook here, but you can do a live stream on Facebook as well. And you can actually even use their different plugins you can use and tools you can use, different websites that one of them is called BeLive, BeLive. And again, I'll put all that stuff in the description of the podcast. But BeLive allows you to create live streams on Twitter. On Facebook and YouTube, and you can go in and basically create a split screen interview with someone. So if you're, a podcaster and you want to do things with video once in a while, you can have that interview live and then take the audio and repurpose it for your podcast later. So I like doing those because they're fun to do. I love, as you can tell from my podcast, I love talking, and I love meeting new people and talking to them of, all walks of life. I enjoy that. I think everyone has an expertise no matter what industry they're in. And I'm going to get a little more into that. So you're going to hear me interviewing some folks in upcoming podcasts. I already have one. I was going to say volunteer, but I'll say victim. It's a friend of mine. His name's Brett. So I'm going to interview him. And he is a general contractor. And we're going to do a marketing audit as part of the podcast. We're going to walk through that so you folks can hear that. But I just want to show folks, and that's the reason I do audits. I want to show people how effective that is. But you see where I'm going with this? A live stream on my podcast, or a podcast rather, or a live stream on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, where I do something like that. You're doing a couple of things. One, you're using video, which is engaging. And two, you're talking about something that would interest people. You're auditing their business. So if there are other general contractors out there, which we know there are plenty of general contractors, they might hear it and say, oh, maybe I'll check this out. And you might end up getting business even. But even if you don't, if you're anything like me, it's fun. It's fun to talk. It's fun to interview. It's fun to dig in there and get some information. And the more you do that, the better you get at it, which is my last point. I've already gone through the 12 tips on how to grow and maintain your audience through education and engagement. But I just want to throw out there that if you're a person that's not comfortable, you get nervous, you're not comfortable, maybe doing video, maybe you're not even comfortable doing a podcast. One of the things that will help you is if you join a local networking group in your city or town. And BNI forms them. There's also smaller ones. If you go on meetup.com, you'll see them, or bni.com. You can find one. And BNI is a little expensive, so you might find others through Meetup that are less expensive. But either way, they're both good places to get that. And if you do that, if you join one of those, you meet with businesses, you talk, you give presentations once in a while. It kind of helps you get a little more comfortable in your own skin, right? So if you're nervous and you don't know what to say or do, it's really helpful. It's almost like joining Toastmasters in a way, which is an organization that's been around a long time. It just helps you with public speaking, and that's all it focuses on. But I think it's a little more valuable to get kind of quote unquote on the job experience, interacting, talking, giving presentations through a networking group, because you can also grow your business at the same time. So that's it for this week. I am looking forward to providing more content for you next week, and I hope to hear from some folks. Please, speaking about engagement, that's the whole deal of what we're doing today, the whole point. Please leave me a voice message. Go to anchor.fm/expressleads on your iPhone or Android or on the computer, and just leave me a voice message. Let me know what you think of the show. Give me some feedback, or tell me whether you liked it, you didn't like it. Give me some requests for new topics you want me to cover. Or if you're a Star Trek or coffee fan, I'll throw a bunch of those into a podcast, and we'll have some fun with that while we talk about how to grow your business at the same time. So just want to thank everyone for joining me again. Look forward to joining you next time. My name's Paul Brady, the host of Express Leads. And until next time, have a great weekend. This has been Express Leads, hosted by Paul Brady of Brady Consulting and Inbound Marketing. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave us a voice message by visiting anchor.fm/expressleads. Thank you.